So if you want to hit a golf ball, I don't know, 300 yards, your very first instinct is probably just to grab the club and swing your arms as fast as humanly possible, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it makes intuitive sense.
Yeah, exactly. The club head hits the ball, so the arms moving the club head, they must be the source of all that speed.
Right. But when you actually look at the raw biomechanical data of elite ball strikers, you start to realize that generating effortless power has, well, almost nothing to do with swinging your arms.
It's wild. It has everything to do with how violently you can stomp on the ground.
Exactly. The ground is probably the single most underutilized asset in the average golfer's swing.
Yeah.
I mean, we get so easily mesmerized by the blur of the club head.
Because it's moving the fastest.
Right, because it's the fastest moving part of the system.
Yeah.
So we completely ignore the engine that's actually creating that speed. The club is just the very end of a much larger ground-up kinetic chain.
Yeah, and if you aren't using the turf to create resistance and leverage, you're basically just fighting your own anatomy.
You are. You're making it so much harder on yourself.
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for part 7 of this 10-part series. We are taking a deep dive into the science of golf biomechanics, kinematics, and ground reaction forces.
It's a fun one today.
It really is. We're decoding how the body actually moves from the ground up, right?
Right.
Isolating the exact checkpoints that allow tour professionals to generate staggering power without looking like they're swinging out of their shoes.
Yeah, making it look effortless.
Exactly. And to do this, we're synthesizing a massive 308 golfer study from the Journal of Sports Sciences, plus some fascinating biomechanical research from Florida Gulf Coast University.
Which is fantastic data, by the way.
Oh, it's incredible. And we're pairing that with premium insights from top-tier coaches, guys like Nick Foy, Adam Bazalgette, James Parker, Tyler Farrell, Tony Ruggiero, and the team at PowerScourt Golf Club.
That's a serious lineup.
Right. Oh, and we're also looking at how AI apps like WatchIt Golf are bringing this high-level data straight to your smartphone now, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, the tech is crazy now.
Yeah.
But to understand why the ground matters at all, I mean, we really have to start with the concept of dynamic balance.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the instructional team at PowerScourt Golf Club emphasizes this heavily. Balance in a high-speed athletic motion. It isn't a static state.
Right, it's not just standing still.
No, it isn't just standing upright at address. It's governed by Newton's third law of motion. So if you want to project force in one direction, like out toward the target, you have to push with equal opposite force into the ground.
Equal and opposite.
Right. And if your dynamic balance is compromised during that, your neurological system basically panics.
Like it senses you're going to fall over.
Exactly. Its primary goal shifts to just keeping you from falling on your face.
Yeah.
So it immediately shuts down your ability to rotate or, generate any serious clubhead speed.
Wow. So if the brain senses instability, it just slams on the brake.
Completely. And that instability directly sabotages the one thing that, let's be honest, every amateur golfer is desperately chasing, which is low point control.
Oh, man. The holy grail. Low point control.
Yeah. James Parker actually references this famous observation by Bobby Clampett. It's known as the 4-inch rule. Have you heard of this?
I think so, but explain it for the listener who hasn't.
So to properly compress an iron, the absolute lowest point of your swing arc must occur exactly 4 inches past the golf ball.
Wait, 4 inches past it, not exactly at the ball.
Past it, yeah. You have to consider the geometry of a proper golf strike. To trap the ball against the turf, which creates the friction necessary for backspin and lift, the club head still has to be traveling downward when it makes contact.
Okay, right. So you need a descending angle of attack.
Precisely. But here's the issue. If your pressure and your mass stay trapped on your trail foot during the downswing, well, your center of gravity remains behind the golf ball.
And so the geometry just completely shifts.
It does. If your center of mass is behind the ball, the bottom of your swing arc shifts behind the ball.
Yeah, that's when you just slam the club into the dirt, right? Like a heavy, fat shot.
Yeah, chunk it right into the ground. Or what often happens is your brain reacts, you subconsciously pull your arms up to avoid the dirt, and you catch the top half of the ball.
Ah, and blade it straight across the green into the bunker.
We've all been there. But the point is, you physically cannot consistently achieve that 4-inch forward low point without shifting pressure correctly from the ground up. You have to move your mass into your lead side.
Just to drag the bottom of that swing arc forward.
Exactly.
You know, it's funny. If you go to any local driving range, the overwhelming mindset is still just muscling the ball. I mean, even when people try to shift their weight, it just looks like they're throwing their shoulders and arms at the target.
Because it genuinely feels to the player like the upper body is doing all the heavy lifting. But we need to completely reframe the mental model of the golf swing.
Okay, reframe it how?
Well, you are muscling the club with your upper torso. A mechanically sound golf swing is actually an act of pulling kinetic energy out of the earth.
I love that visual, pulling energy out of the earth.
Yeah, think of your legs and your feet as like heavy machinery. They're generating the raw force. And your arms are simply flexible cables transferring that force out into the club head.
So the looser the cables, the faster the energy transfer.
Exactly. The tighter you squeeze your arms and shoulders, the more you restrict that energy flow. It just gets jammed up.
That idea of arms as loose cables transferring energy, that leads perfectly into the hard science of how that energy is manufactured in the first place.
Oh, for sure.
Because that Journal of Sports Sciences study we looked at, they analyzed 308 golfers. That is an incredibly robust biomechanical sample size.
It's massive for this kind of research.
Yeah, and when they analyzed the very top of the backswing, the defining characteristic of high ball velocity wasn't how far the arms pulled back, it was the X factor.
Right, the X factor. That's the biomechanical term for the separation angle between the rotation of your pelvis and the rotation of your upper torso.
Basically the coil, right?
It's essentially the coil. But the mechanism behind why this actually generates speed is the stretch shortening cycle of your muscles.
The stretch shortening cycle.
Yeah, so by restricting your hip turn just slightly while continuing to turn your shoulders, you're stretching your core muscles like a massive rubber band.
Oh, I see. So you're creating immense potential elastic energy.
Exactly that. The wider that separation angle, the more tension is built right into the fascial tissue of your core.
But the researchers also found another critical checkpoint at the top of the swing, right? The lead knee flexion.
Yes, this is huge. The data demonstrated that allowing the front knee to bend inward properly, it actually correlated to a 0.203 standard deviation increase in ball velocity.
That's a massive jump just from letting the knee bend.
It really is. Because if the front knee stays locked, well, the hips just can't turn.
Right.
But letting it bend and point slightly behind the golf ball, that allows the pelvis to rotate freely without swaying off the center line. And that naturally loads the pressure firmly into the trail leg.
And that load in the trail leg is what sets the stage for the downswing transition.
Exactly. As we move into what coaches call the P5 position.
Which is when the lead arm is parallel to the ground on the way down, right?
Right, exactly. At P5, that stored elastic energy must be unleashed. This is where the center of pressure peak velocity occurs. When that lead arm is parallel to the ground, elite ball strikers are aggressively shifting their pressure into their lead foot.
And the magnitude of this force is just astonishing to me. The study shows they apply vertical ground reaction force into the lead foot equal to up to 2 times their own body weight.
Yeah, 2 times. So a 200-pound golfer is slamming 400 pounds of downward force into their front foot just before impact.
That is wild. I know James Parker uses a visualization for this that makes it instantly tangible.
The Coke can analogy.
Yes. He tells his students to imagine they're trying to crush an empty Coke can under their lead foot at that exact P5 position.
It's a great visual.
It is, because you aren't just stepping on it, you are stomping on it to flatten it right into the turf.
And that 400-pound downward stomp is what creates the equal and opposite upward reaction that you need for impact.
Right, going back to Newton's law.
Exactly. The study reveals that achieving high ball velocity requires an upward bodily movement as you strike the ball. The researchers label it a pelvis superior shift.
Pelvis superior shift. So you're essentially pushing up and away from the ground.
Using the turf as a springboard.
It's kind of like the biomechanical equivalent of a boxer throwing a knockout uppercut, right? You don't just swing your arm upward, you sink into your legs and drive up from the floor to deliver that energy.
That's a perfect comparison, yeah.
But wait, if a golfer is thrusting their pelvis upward with 400 pounds of force, how do they not completely lose their posture? I mean, if I thrust my hips up that violently, my head is going to fly upward, my spine will stand straight up, and I'll just swing right over the top of the golf ball.
Right, which goes against everything we're taught.
Exactly. We've all been told since day one to keep our heads perfectly still.
Well, this is where modern biomechanics kind of shatters old golfing myths.
Yeah.
You actually accommodate that massive upward pelvic thrust through something called lateral bending.
Okay, lateral bending. Explain that.
So the study found that at impact, elite players increase their trunk lateral bend, meaning their spine literally tilts sideways, away from the target to about 14.4 degrees.
Sideways, away from the target. Okay.
Yeah. And simultaneously, they maintain a forward trunk tilt, basically bowing toward the golf ball at about 22 to 24 degrees.
Ah, so the hips are thrusting aggressively up and forward to generate speed, so the spine has to tilt backward and sideways to counterbalance that
You
force.
got it. That's what keeps the head relatively stable and ensures the club stays on the correct swing plane instead of just being thrown completely outward.
But maintaining those specific angles like 14 degrees of lateral bend and 24 degrees of forward tilt while fighting 400 pounds of upward thrust, that must require incredible core strength.
Oh, it really does. Your abdominal muscles have to fire aggressively to resist spinal extension.
Which is just the body's natural urge to stand straight up when pushing off the ground, right?
Exactly. It wants to stand up, and your core has to fight it.
And all of this ground force and bodily geometry culminates in one specific event just prior to impact, doesn't it? The delayed release.
Yes. The study highlights that the maximum velocity of the wrist hinge uncocking must be delayed until the final 40 milliseconds before impact.
40 milliseconds.
Yeah, it's the physics of angular momentum. Think of a figure skater pulling their arms into their body to spin faster, right?
Right.
By holding the angle between the lead arm and the club shaft, which is what we call lag, you keep the radius of the swing really small.
Yeah.
This allows the body to rotate incredibly fast.
And then what?
Then, releasing those wrist angles in the final 40 milliseconds violently transfers all of that accumulated rotational speed out to the club head.
I mean, 40 milliseconds is less than a tenth of a blink of an eye.
It's impossibly fast.
You're holding all that massive stored energy, resisting the centrifugal pull of the club head, and then unleashing it in a microscopic window.
And to survive those immense forces, the body's joints just have to be perfectly aligned.
Yeah, let's look at how the best players in the world physically express this, starting with the knee pivot mechanics from Adam Bazalgette at Scratch Golf Academy.
Yeah, Bazalgette observes that elite players display a really highly symmetrical look in their knees at the top of the backswing.
Symmetrical how?
Well, as the trail hip rotates back and deep, the trail knee follows it slightly, releasing some of its flex. Meanwhile, the lead knee gains flex and points inward. So it creates this beautifully balanced, mirrored stability.
The key takeaway there is that the back leg does not remain rigidly locked.
No, absolutely not. If you lock your trail knee, you physically restrict your hip rotation. The pelvis just cannot turn deeply if the femur is locked in a static position.
Which makes sense mechanically.
Right. And Bazalgette points to varying styles across golf history to prove this is a universal law. It's not just some stylistic preference. Like, look at Bobby Jones in the 1920s.
Oh yeah, he had a huge knee movement.
A very pronounced knee movement with a massive lead heel lift. But at the top of his swing, his knees achieved perfect symmetry. Now, compare that to the modern world number one, Scottie Scheffler.
Scheffler's got that famously active lower body through impact, right? His feet are practically dancing and shuffling.
His follow-through is wild to watch.
Yeah.
But if you pause his swing at the exact top of the backswing, there is very little unnecessary movement, and he achieves that exact same symmetrical knee structure as Bobby Jones.
Ah.
And then you examine Tiger Woods hitting a driver. Tiger stays incredibly grounded and centered, but there's a noticeable controlled rotation of the trail knee to allow his hips to turn deeply and load power into his right side.
That is fascinating. You have three completely different golfers from completely different eras. Bobby Jones with his flowing hickory shaft swing, Scottie Scheffler with his modern foot shuffle, and Tiger Woods with, the most explosive athletic action of his generation.
Right.
Yet, despite wildly different aesthetics, they all arrive at the exact same kinetic symmetry to stabilize their pelvis.
It just proves that this joint alignment is a biomechanical absolute.
But to achieve that pelvic stability and knee symmetry, the setup has to be flawless before the club even twitches, right?
That is the secret.
Which brings us to the science of foot flare. And that simply means angling your toes outward at address rather than standing with your feet perfectly perpendicular to the target line.
Yeah. And for decades, traditional coaching preached the railroad track method,
Oh yeah, stand perfectly square, feet parallel, toes pointing straight ahead.
Right. But if locking the back knee jams the hip joint and restricts rotation, we have to assume that standing perfectly square on parallel railroad tracks does the exact same thing to the anatomy of the pelvis.
It absolutely does, right?
It really does. The perfectly square stance persisted because, well, human beings just love symmetry and straight lines. It looks neat and properly aligned to the eye.
But functionally?
Functionally, our hip joints are ball and socket mechanisms. They do not operate efficiently in straight lines. Florida Gulf Coast University actually ran a detailed study on this.
Oh, right. Comparing a parallel square stance to a highly flared 45-degree stance.
Exactly. Analyzing the effect on the X factor and overall swing speed.
A 45-degree flare sounds like a ballet dancer in first position. I imagine that sacrifices way too much lateral stability, like you'd slide right past the golf ball.
Yeah, it's too much. A 45-degree flare does compromise stability, causing a loss of ground leverage. But the optimal angles are much more nuanced, according to the data gathered by Nick Foy's Golf Academy.
So what are the optimal angles?
Your trail foot, so the back foot, should flare outward about 10 to 20 degrees.
Just a tiny adjustment.
But it's profound because it frees up internal rotation in your trail hip socket.
It gives the ball room to turn inside the socket, basically, allowing you to turn your pelvis deeper into the backswing without swaying your entire body off the golf ball.
Exactly. And the lead foot actually requires even more flare, typically between 20 and 30 degrees.
20 to 30 degrees on the front foot.
Yeah, this facilitates external rotation on the downswing. Because as you crush that Coke can and push upward, your hips must clear rapidly toward the target to make room for your arms to swing through.
And if that lead foot is perfectly square, the femur physically hits the edge of the hip socket.
You literally run out of anatomical room to turn. And the body is incredibly smart, right? It'll find a way to avoid pain.
Right.
If the hips can't turn because the feet are square, the body compensates. It'll either strain the knee ligaments, tweak the lower back, or simply stand up out of the shot.
Which causes early extension and completely ruins those spine angles we just talked about.
Exactly. Honestly, simply turning your lead toes out 20 degrees could theoretically cure a chronic slice, just because your hips finally have the anatomical clearance to open up, allowing the club to drop onto the correct inside path.
That is wild.
But it's important to note that the amount of flare is dictated by the speed of the club. Like wedges require less pelvic rotation, so less flare is needed. A driver requires maximum hip clearance, so that demands the 20 to 30 degree lead foot flare.
Okay, so we established the foundation with the foot flare, allowing the hips to turn. But Tony Ruggiero at Dew Sweeper TV brings up another crucial element of footwork, which is trail foot stability during the transition.
Yes. So flaring the trail foot 10 to 20 degrees allows you to load pressure into it, but that foot must remain solidly planted as you begin the downswing.
It can't slide around.
Right. Ruggiero notes that a very common amateur flaw is twisting or spinning the trail foot off the ground way too early. When that trail heel pops up and twists outward prematurely, it violently shoves the right hip out toward the golf ball.
And if the right hip thrusts out toward the ball, it pushes the hands and the club head out with it.
Which forces the club over the top of the swing plane for a steep slicing path.
But keeping the trail foot planted into the ground as you transition acts as an anchor. It keeps your back to the target just a fraction of a second longer, which lets the club drop perfectly into the slot.
Spot on. So, moving from the theory into how we actually build these neuromuscular habits, Tyler Farrell from Golf Smart Academy advocates this phenomenal drill for the lead foot.
Oh, the band drill. I love this one.
It's so good. If you are someone who spins out or your weight rolls onto the outside edge of your front foot through impact, you are leaking all of that 400 pounds of vertical ground force outward instead of upward.
Right. So to fix this, Farrell uses just a simple elastic resistance band. You step on one end of the band with the base of your lead, big toe-like, right under the ball of the foot.
Yep.
You pull the other end of the band so there's decent tension, and you make a controlled half swing, just going from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
And the physical goal of the drill is to rotate your pelvis completely over that lead foot through impact while keeping the arch of your foot engaged and maintaining heavy pressure on the band.
Because if you lose focus and your foot spins or you roll onto the side of your shoe, the pressure releases and the band snaps back at you.
The instant physical feedback is brilliant.
It really is. And the best part is you can just grab a resistance band and practice that 9 to 3 lead toe drill in your living room right now. You don't need a ball or a driving range to begin mapping that neurological feeling of rotating your pelvis over a rock-solid, stable post.
Completely.
But what about the back foot? How do we address the player who reverse pivots, leaning toward the target on the backswing instead of loading the trail side?
Well, Tony Ruggiero offers a highly effective visualization for this called the Paloma drill.
The Paloma drill. I could go for a Paloma right now.
Right. So if you struggle with a reverse pivot, you get into your golf posture without a club, and imagine you are holding a Paloma cocktail in both hands.
Okay.
Now practice turning your torso and handing that drink to a friend standing directly behind you.
Oh, that's clever. To hand a drink to someone behind you without spilling it, you're naturally forced to load your weight securely into the inside of your trail hip.
Exactly. You have to turn deeply without swaying your upper body. If you reverse pivot and lean forward, well, you dump the drink all over your own shoes.
That's a brilliant visual. The drill just instinctively forces the pressure into the inside of the trail foot where it belongs, setting up a powerful transition.
And for players who want to verify these movements with hard data, we are seeing incredible advancements in AI object detection right now, specifically with the WatchIt Golf PRO app.
Yeah, you no longer need to rent out a $20,000 3D biomechanics lab to measure your angles.
The technology has been completely democratized. You just set up 2 standard smartphones on tripods, one facing you directly and one down the target line.
Just normal smartphones.
Yeah. The app links both cameras to an iPad and calculates your specific body angles in real time. It'll measure your exact X factor at the top of the swing, verify your 24 degrees of forward trunk tilt, and confirm your 14 degrees of lateral bend at impact.
That is just incredible. Okay, let's synthesize this entire kinetic chain chronologically, bringing all these joints and forces together into a single cohesive sequence for the listener.
All right, let's do it. The sequence actually begins before you even swing. First, build the foundation. Flare the trail foot 10 to 20 degrees to allow internal rotation, and flare the lead foot 20 to 30 degrees to allow external rotation.
Got it.
Second, as the club goes back, load the pressure firmly into the inside of that trail foot, handing the Paloma to your friend.
The Paloma, yeah.
Third, at the top of the swing, maximize your X factor by separating your upper torso from your pelvis. Store that elastic energy while maintaining symmetrical knee flex.
And then the downswing initiates.
Fourth, as your lead arm reaches parallel to the ground at P5, crush the Coke can. Stomp aggressively into the lead foot to create peak vertical ground pressure.
Stomping down.
Fifth, as you approach the golf ball, shift your pelvis upward and bend your trunk laterally away from the target to accommodate that immense upward force.
Up and away.
And finally, release the wrist angles in the last 40 milliseconds and hold a perfectly balanced, dynamic finish, proving your forces were directed efficiently toward the target.
This chronological sequence perfectly encapsulates the core theme we've been building throughout this entire deep dive. Elite golfers are not working harder than amateurs. They are working much smarter using the laws of physics.
Exactly.
They utilize the ground to generate effortless power, and they meticulously align their joints to rotate freely rather than fighting the anatomical limitations of their own bodies.
It is the literal difference between trying to throw a knockout punch while sitting in an office chair on wheels versus throwing a punch with your feet planted firmly on concrete.
That is a great way to put it.
The ground is your absolute greatest ally if you understand how to harness it.
Well said. There's one final, highly provocative thought from the Journal of Sports Sciences study to leave you with before you head to the range today.
Oh, this is a good one.
We have spent this entire discussion obsessing over the massive muscles, the hips, the core, the glutes, the legs, which act as the engines generating these ground reaction forces. But the study highlighted a completely unsung hero at the very end of the kinetic chain, which is your forearms.
Yeah. Because all of that kinetic power generated by the ground travels sequentially up the body,
Right.
but it ultimately has to be contained and transferred by the hands.
Right. To physically hold that massive lag created by the lower body and to successfully delay the release of the club head until those final 40 milliseconds, your forearm muscles must generate immense torque.
They're actively fighting massive centrifugal force that's desperately trying to throw the heavy club head outward early in the downswing.
And this data completely changes how we should view grip strength and forearm conditioning in golf. I mean, you could possess the strongest legs and the fastest hips in the world, but if your forearms are weak, the centrifugal force wins.
You'll cast the club early, bleeding all that massive ground force out into the air before the club face ever reaches the ball.
So your forearm torque must essentially match the power output of your lower body.
It has to, yeah.
Something crucial to mull over next time you are analyzing your impact position. If you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us continue producing high-quality educational content for golfers and coaches worldwide. If you have a question, topic idea, or golf challenge you would like us to research, test, and explain, please leave a comment, contact us on LinkedIn, or send us an email. Don't forget to explore the eCoach 360-degree golf intelligence platform and experience our 48-hour free trial. You can also join our 30-day golf biomechanics, kinematics, ground reaction forces, and club kinematics certification program to deepen your understanding of golf performance.